What's going on, guys? My name is Matt, and I was recently on eBay doing research for a video looking at the prices that different graphics cards were selling for. eBay has a useful feature where you can search the item you're looking for and then select the sold items option. This shows you what that particular item's been selling for. This is useful for figuring out how much to spend on an item or to figure out how much you could sell your old stuff for. I was searching to see how much GTX 1050 Ti's were selling for, and boy was I surprised. It's kind of crazy how much people are still paying for these used, but the even more surprising thing was how many of the recently sold 1050 Ti's were fake. I went through the most recent 100 sold at the time, and just over 20 of them were fake. That means based on that sample, it seems that 1 in every 5 that are sold on eBay are flat out counterfeits. 20% is no insignificant number, and it's kind of mind-blowing people are still falling for this fake GPU scam. Now, I personally don't have any experience with these cards, so I decided to pick one up, test it out, see if it really is fake, and try and teach you how to spot a fake GPU out in the wild. But before I get into the video, I want to take a minute to talk about today's sponsor, Trade. Trade takes the guesswork out of finding the perfect coffee for you. I personally feel pretty overwhelmed when I see all the coffee selections at a typical store, but with Trade you take a quick 2-minute quiz and are matched with the perfect coffee for your specific palate. My top match was Carmela's from Doma. It has notes of brown sugar, dark chocolate, and caramel, and so far I've been enjoying it a lot. My favorite way to make coffee is by way of cold brew. I just fill one of the Trade cold brew bags with the coffee of my choice, tie it off, add filtered water, and let it sit for between 12 and 18 hours. This is super simple and it makes enough for a number of days. Trade partners with 50 of the nation's best roasters, and there are literally hundreds of different coffees to get paired with. As a gift for my viewers, Trade is going to give the first 100 people who click the link in the description 30% off their first coffee. All you have to do is click the link and use the code TechByMatt. I've personally ordered from them a couple of times at this point and can highly recommend it. Thanks again to Trade for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to your regularly scheduled content. So back to the topic of fake graphics cards. You may think that all of these cards are coming direct from China, as running a scam like this in the US would probably get shut down pretty quickly, but actually a lot of these listings are from US based sellers. Take this one for example, is coming from California. This listing is particularly fishy and kind of hilarious for a number of reasons. One, the title says GTX 1050 Ti 2GB, which no 2GB 1050 Ti's were ever produced as far as I know, but the picture does say GTX 1050, so adding the Ti in the title might have just been an accident, but honestly probably not. The funniest thing about this listing is the main picture for it. A lot of sellers will include images of popular games like Fortnite or PUBG to make you think you can play those games with these cards, but the seller decided to add a picture of Game of Thrones, a book/TV series which never had a video game made of it, so not really sure what they were trying to go for with that, but whatever. Because of all this, I decided this would be the perfect listing to go for. I added one Game of Thrones edition 1050 Ti to my cart and proceeded to checkout. Then all that was left to do was wait patiently by my door for the next week and a half in anticipation for the arrival of this card. So the card took a little over a week to arrive, which makes me think this was sent directly from California and wasn't some sort of drop shipping situation. The box it came in was pretty small. I mean, even measly GT 1030s have larger boxes than this, but I digress. I thought this box would have another box within it which would have product information, logos, and all that good stuff on the outside of it, but in reality, inside the box was just the card itself and what I'm hoping is anti-static bubble wrap and a very sketchy looking driver CD, which I don't remember the last time I received a driver disc with a video card. Pulling the card out of the bubble wrap, I first decided to do a quick physical inspection. I wanted to see if there were any labels or stickers giving more information on the card. Flipping the card to the back, I found a sticker that states that this is in fact a 2GB GTX 1050 Ti. This was the only labeling on the card other than the 2 stickers on the front of the fans with Chinese lettering. I tried to translate this but couldn't really get anything useful or accurate from the app I was using. So if you can read this and are able to translate it to English, let me know what it says in the comment section down below. A quick glance at this card makes you think it's a pretty normal dual fan graphics card that could very well be a 1050 Ti. But once you start to look a little closer, one thing after another starts popping up. Firstly, beyond 1050 Ti's not having 2GB of video memory, memory. I also don't think I've ever seen one with a VGA port. I don't even remember any 900 series Nvidia cards having VGA, let alone a 1000 series card. The cooler appears to be just a big hunk of aluminum with some extruded fins. I doubt there is any copper in this, but we'll open it up and find out later in the video. There's this weird metal bracket that spans the length of the card's PCB, not sure what that's for, and finally there are memory modules mounted on the back of the PC, not something I've ever remember seeing on my other cards I've owned. This is weird because many times there are thermal pads normally over the modules which will interface with the GPU heatsink, or even if they aren't interfacing with the heatsink, they will at least get airflow from the fans if they're mounted on the same side as the GPU die. There are a number of other suspicious things about this card, but I think you get the point. After this quick inspection, I decided to go ahead and pop it into a system. I decided to use one of my Dell Optiplexes as that's the kind of system I could see one of these cards going into. I first booted the PC up, cleared out the old drivers with DDU, and shut the system back down. I opened up the Optiplex, removed the old card, and transferred in the alleged GTX 1050 Ti. I booted the system up, and what do you know, it seems to be working okay. Going into Device Manager, it says this is a GTX 1050 Ti. I hopped onto Nvidia's website and downloaded the latest drivers, and they seemingly installed just fine. I begrudgingly signed into GeForce Experience, cracked the CAPTCHA DaVinci code to enter in, and saw a prompt saying no drivers were installed. So I had to reinstall the drivers in GeForce Experience. This was weird, and even after the second time it still said no driver installed. Maybe the driver did install and GeForce Experience just isn't recognizing it. I decided to try and test Fortnite. I picture a lot of people buying these cards are kids or not very tech savvy parents buying their kids this card so that they can play games like Fortnite, CSGO, and Overwatch with their friends. They probably look up benchmarks for a 1050 Ti, see it performs great in those games, and then purchase it because if this truly is a 1050 Ti, then $50 is a great price for it. But just like me, when they try to load up their first game of Fortnite with great anticipation, they soon will realize something's not right. For me, I make money from these videos, so this card not working right isn't a huge deal and is just a business expense. But for a kid saving up and then spending $50 on this only to find out it doesn't work correctly, I imagine could be pretty devastating. I then tried another game, maybe Fortnite was just a fluke. How about something simpler like CSGO? This again didn't work correctly, it opened up for a second and then crashed. I reinstalled the card in the PCIe slot, reinstalled the drivers, and it still crashed. At this point, I just wanted to take the card out and open it up to see what it really was. Well, the scammers can counterfeit stickers to say this is a 1050 Ti and use software tricks to make my computer think it's a 1050 Ti. Something they could never change is the etching on the GPU die itself. To open the card up, all I had to do was remove these 4 screws, lift the PCB from the cooler, and detach the fan connector. This left the bare graphics card PCB and the cooler. My suspicions from earlier were confirmed when looking at the cooler. This is just a big hunk of aluminum, which for the record isn't the end of the world. A 1050 Ti is relatively low powered, so a heatsink like this is boring, but adequate. I then went ahead and used alcohol wipes to remove the thermal paste from the GPU die and the cooler. This revealed the text on the GPU die, which read GF116-200-KA-A1. If you take this product number and search for it online, you'll find that this is actually a GTS 450 revision 2. This is a card from almost a decade ago and is significantly slower than a 1050 Ti. The GTS 450 also usually came with only 1GB of RAM. While a card with 2GB of video memory in 2019 isn't ideal, 1GB isn't even usable in most modern games. I didn't even get any games up and running to see how the memory would affect the gameplay, but from what I've seen with these fake cards, once the system tries to use above 1GB of video memory, the game will crash. The 2GB 1050 Ti already isn't a thing, so I don't know why they didn't just call this a 1GB 1050 Ti and had it appear as a 1GB card to the system. That way at least the games wouldn't crash and people might be tricked into thinking that's just how the card performs and might not even question if there's inherently something wrong or counterfeit about the card. So how do we fix this? Is there a way to return this to a GTS 450 in the eyes of the computer? And can the GTS 450 actually play any games? So there are a few ways to do this. Many times when buying used mining cards for gaming, they will come with a custom mining BIOS. This is great for mining cryptocurrency, but makes the card almost unusable in games. I've fixed a few of these cards by simply downloading a BIOS flashing tool and then finding the original BIOS for the card online. You then just load up the program, select the BIOS file you want to flash flash the BIOS, and bada boom, bada bang, your card is up and running again. So I wanted to try this first as it's the simplest solution and there was a good chance it could work. So I reapplied the thermal paste, reassembled the cooler, and reinstalled the card. I did the aforementioned method to try and flash the BIOS, but it wouldn't stick. This leads me to believe the maker of this card put something in the fake BIOS to prevent this flashing from happening. At this point, I kind of wanted to just give up hope, throw in the towel, and admit defeat, but I decided to do a little more research. I found others had run into this same problem with these fake cards, and a few people found solutions. I found videos from Phil's Computer Lab and Dawood Does Tech on this subject that I found pretty useful. In these videos, they use these physical BIOS flash tools to bypass the software and flash the BIOS directly. They were using these CH341A SPI flasher USB programmers. Looking these up, I found I could get a kit with everything I needed for just under $9. So I thought, what the heck, let's go ahead and pick one up and see if I can get this GPU back up and working. Because if I couldn't flash this card with the original BIOS, then it was basically useless. That is, unless you need a paperweight or a coaster for your desk. I placed my order and again had to wait a number of days to work on this project. After around a week, the programmer came in and it was time to try it out. Opening the package up, inside I found a USB main board, an adapter board, an alligator clip, and a few other parts. To flash the BIOS with this method, I again had to remove the GPU, open it up, and for good measure remove the old thermal paste again. The way this works is the alligator clip attaches to the BIOS chip on the graphics card PCB, the cable attaches to this adapter board, the adapter board plugs into the USB main board, and that USB plugs into your computer. The only problem is that there weren't many instructions on how to orient each of these connectors, and I wasn't really sure which chip on the card was for the BIOS. I spent a number of hours trying to figure this out and flash the card with the original BIOS, but kept failing. After spending a couple days working on this project, I decided to throw in the towel and just admit defeat. This fake 1050 Ti bested me, and it now will be my coaster of shame. Luckily, I was able to contact eBay and get a full refund for this card. Hopefully this video showed you these cards are absolutely not worth it. If you're watching this video, it means you're probably into PC hardware and probably wouldn't have bought one originally, but if anyone you know tries to get one, please steer them clear. If they save up $20 or $30 more, they can get an RX 470 on eBay that will perform amazingly in all the popular esports games. If they can't use external PCIe power, then they can pick up a 2GB 750 Ti for the same price as the counterfeit card. This will still work fine for Fortnite, Overwatch, CSGO, League of Legends, and more. Overall, I kinda knew going into this what was gonna happen, but really I just wanted to get my hands on one of these and play around with it. So yeah guys, I think this wraps this video up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up, as well as consider subscribing for more PC and tech related content in the future. And thanks again to Trade for sponsoring this video. If you're one of the first 100 people to click the link in the description and use the code TechByMatt, then you can get 30% off your first coffee.